Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a Thai noodle dish called Pad Kee Mao, or oftentimes it is colloquially referred to as Thai drunken noodles, which I learned very recently is because it is a noodle in Thailand that is commonly eaten when you're drunk. It's a late night thing, so that's cool. I didn't know. Someone on Reddit told me that. So, TIL. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the variations that you can do in a Thai drunken noodle. The version that we're going to be doing today is going to be using a little bit of chicken thigh, because I happen to have a lot of chicken thigh right now. But the original recipe that we had written also makes use, I believe it was using ground pork. You could also use ground chicken, you could use ground turkey, any kind of fatty ground mince will work in that scenario. Today we're going to be using chicken thigh because I have a bunch of it, like literally a whole bunch of it. This happens pretty much any time that we do our food pop-up. So I have like, I don't know, about 3 or 4 pounds of chicken thigh pre-cooked already, so we're going to make use of that stuff so we can eat it up before it goes bad. So we're going to be talking through a couple of the things that you can do and ways that you can make variations on the Thai drunken noodle, all of which are pretty relatively common throughout a lot of the different recipes that I've come across that do Thai drunken noodles. So if you have any questions for me, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about Thai noodles, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful. As always, pretty much everything that we cook on stream has a recipe video that goes along with it, including this one. That's over on my YouTube channel, so if you're watching over on Reddit, there's a YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. Those recipe videos, they're out every Friday, so I want to say a Friday back in April or so, we came out with a recipe for this particular noodle dish. So if you're looking for that stuff, especially if you're trying to reproduce the things that we're cooking, that's a good one to flag down and kind of bookmark, because that's where the written recipe is, and it's also where I kind of like talk through all of the things that I'm doing in a recipe, so you can go a little bit farther beyond just like following the ingredients and more start to understand what are the things that I'm doing and why I put those things in this recipe. So that's a good thing to check out if you are trying to cook these things. Also, some people just like to watch the videos. I know that lots of people have just been binge watching those things. So, if you want, I think you can watch them for like 4 hours straight. I think some people do that. It's cool. So, as with most of our savory, at least our umami-forward dishes, especially noodle dishes like this one, I'm starting off that was 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic. And next up, this is going to be about a tablespoon or about half about an inch's worth of ginger. So with our garlic, you'll notice that I didn't do too much to it. We pretty much just crushed it, and that was about it. I gave it a really quick slice too, but with the ginger, on the other hand, because it is a more dense and more durable root veggie, it's more like the texture of like a potato, I guess, because it's a root. We do have to go through and do our fine mince. So I did skip the fine mince on the garlic, but you actually do need to do that stuff with your ginger. Otherwise, you're going to get big chunks of ginger floating around. So the only real trick to good solid fine mince, in my experience, has really just been about, I guess like mainly is just about persistence, but the other big thing is making sure your knife is nice and sharp. Lots of times I give up a little bit early on the fine mince too, so if you want, you can probably give up a little bit early and it will probably be okay. You could also put it through a microplane. Lots of people ask about that too. And if you really don't like knife work, that's a good shortcut. Alright. So there's our ginger and our garlic. Let's do this. Okay, so next up is going to be our red bell pepper, which insofar as I have researched, I just chopped this the wrong way. As far as I've researched, the red bell pepper, it comes up in pretty much all Pad Kee Mao dishes that I've seen. I think the only real reason that happens is because it's really pretty. Because it stands next to the green broccoli. It's really bright, has this nice contrasting colors. I genuinely believe that that's the reason why you see it come up in like pretty much every Pad Kee Mao dish that you'll see. You will probably come across this red bell pepper. If you don't have a red bell pepper, you could use anything. You could use a yellow bell pepper. You could even use a green bell pepper if you like bell peppers, which are really gross, but if that's your thing, you could totally use that. Also, you could pretty much get away with whatever kind of veggie you happen to have. So if you don't have a bell pepper, but you have maybe say like bean sprouts, that will work really well. You could probably use some kind of leafy green. You could probably throw in some bok choy. All of those things, they're going to taste fine. They might not be technically accurately what a Thai drunken noodle or a Pad Kee Mao is supposed to be, but it worked just fine. That's some fine mince. Yeah, thank you. When I particularly care and when I'm like very careful about, or sometimes even just when I stop paying attention and then I just kind of wander or ramble, I end up doing really good fine minces because I'm not being lazy. I think that's the real answer. All right, so next up, this is our broccoli. Today, as you have probably just noticed, we're using this is plain old broccoli. More commonly or more traditionally in a Pad Kee Mao, you will probably come across Chinese broccoli or gailan, which is similar in shape, very different in flavor. Here in the States, you will very frequently see that gailan substituted out for something like a regular old American broccoli, which is actually my preference because it's. I actually grew up eating gailan. I ate a lot of Chinese broccoli when I was a kid, and it was kind of the vegetable that I just sort of choked down a lot because I did not like eating vegetables when I was a kid. So I have this very bad association with gailan. So very, very frequently when you see me cooking dishes that call for gailan, like a Pad Kee Mao or a Pad See or a lot of stir fries, you probably will see me leaving that gailan out because I just don't like that stuff. So, but if you're trying to keep this your version of Pad Kee Mao really, really traditional, definitely go with the gailan. That's going to be the go-to. What you will notice that I am doing though is that I'm being careful how I chop it, so I'm not just throwing whole chunks of florets like this into our wok. What we want to do is chop them in half, so I'm going pretty thin with these florets. And the particular reason, so we can take a look. Here's what florets look. This is actually pretty small, and they're very, very narrow. So the reason that I'm doing that is because what we're going to be doing with our broccoli today is we're not actually going to do a par cook on it. So very, very commonly when you come across broccoli in most scenarios, you will probably see it have some kind of par cook. That par cook can happen in a number of different ways. Lots of times that will be something like a blanch. It might even be boiled, steamed, stuff like that. Today, we're not going to do any of those things. So this broccoli is literally going to go straight into our wok raw. So that presents a couple of challenges. The main problem that presents that broccoli is a very, very dense vegetable, which means that we're going to have a lot of trouble cooking it all the way through. So there are a couple of ways that we're going to work around that, but the main thing that we're going to do is want to make sure that this stuff is chopped really, really thin. Otherwise, it's either going to burn or it's going to undercook. So in order to make sure that this stuff cooks properly in our flash fry, we want it to be chopped really, really thin. Do I have a vegetable wash or do I rinse my vegetables? It depends if I have enough vegetable wash on hand. So I do have a vegetable wash. This is my vegetable wash over here. It's over in front of, like over my sink, and I don't have a camera over my sink, so no one ever sees what's going on in the sink. But yeah, I do wash it with a vegetable washer. But lots of times I'll run out and I'll just rinse stuff. So there's plenty of stuff that I just rinse. Yeah, exactly. Yellow dart, what the heck is a vegetable wash? So that's a very, I've discovered is a very, very new thing. So when I was growing up, there was no such thing as a vegetable wash. So if you wanted to eat an apple, you either washed it with dish soap or you just rinsed it. Which, if you really think about it, you should probably wash your apples. They're gross. Like, think about how many people have touched that apple. That's disgusting. So what I used to do, like my mom would wash it, or I think my mom would just rinse it off, but I would wash it with dish soap. The problem with that is when you wash fruits and vegetables with dish soap, it ends up tasting like the soap, which is really gross. So both of those scenarios are really gross. So a fruit wash is basically just, it's like a watered down soap that doesn't leave a residual flavor behind. So oftentimes, especially with like scented dish soap, it won't like both leave that soapy flavor, but it will also leave the fragrance of the soap behind, which is really gross too. So fruit wash really useful if you don't want to eat really disgusting apples, I guess, especially during COVID. But yeah, that's definitely like a new discovery for me, like over the last like 10, 12 years or so. And even sometimes I have trouble finding it because it's not super easy to come across. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, acrobatic. Yeah, that's exactly it. So it removes like a lot of the chemicals in the soil and stuff. So lots of times it's useful if you have a vegetable that has been like grown in pesticides and stuff. I mostly do it because a lot of the vegetables that I buy, especially including this broccoli, but also like all of the fruits and stuff, I buy that stuff in Chinatown, so it's sitting out, like literally sitting out on the street. So which is like, if you really think about like how many people have touched that apple or this broccoli before you bought it, it's a lot of people. That's really gross. So probably wash them. Totally your discretion though. Yeah, you can purchase it in most grocery stores. I actually have trouble. There's only one grocery store where I can find this fruit wash, and that's at Trader Joe's. But most of the other grocery stores, I have a lot of trouble finding it. I don't know why. I would imagine that everyone is buying fruit wash. I don't understand why I have so much trouble finding it though. Yeah, cool. All right. Next up, these are going to be our Thai chilies. So we have fresh Thai chilies. They're really pretty. Look how many colors there are on these Thai chilies. I picked these up at the market just because they're pretty. Mostly because they were really pretty. I have other Thai chilies, but these ones are really pretty, so I picked them up. They're also really cheap. They're like $2, so why not? Thai chili, in my experience, they're like one of the predominant, like most defining flavor of a lot of Thai food. So I love throwing not too many of these. Don't go too overboard on Thai chilies because unlike a jalapeno, I feel like you could throw in like 3 or 4 jalapenos, especially if you de-seed them, and it's not going to really make things too spicy. But unlike a jalapeno, a Thai chili, if you throw too many of these in, it will absolutely become too spicy, and then it will also like become like borderline inedible. So my go-to has always been about 6 to 8 of them. Depends on like how big or chili they are. Also depends on how old they are. As they get older, they get spicier. So I usually shoot for 6 to 8. Today we're doing 6, and that usually ends up being like a little bit spicy, but like moderate. So when you go to a restaurant, like when you order Thai food, and you say, "Oh, can you hold back on the spice?" What they're doing is holding back on these chilies generally. Yeah. For the first time in 20 years, you've never washed fruits and never got sick. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I did not ever know about fruit wash until very, very recently. White vinegar. Oh, that's a good idea too. Yeah, I've never used white vinegar to clean fruits. When I was a kid, I used just like rinsed it. That was pretty much it. The main goal was to get all of the dirt off. But there's like if you really think about it, there's a lot of gross stuff that's on your produce. But I like especially do that, like wash that stuff if I'm not gonna cook it. Like with broccoli, it's probably fine because that's gonna go into the wok fry anyway. But if I'm like gonna eat like green onions, for example, I'm like generally pretty careful about making sure that those green onions get washed pretty thoroughly because we're gonna like literally just gonna eat that stuff raw, which is not the greatest. Yeah, feed you. Yes. Hello. Hello, everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a Thai noodle dish called Drunken Noodles, or Pad Kee Mao, depends on who you ask. If you are looking for it, the recipe video that always lives over on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching on Reddit, there's a YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. That's where all of those recipe videos live. We're working our way up to 4,500 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you want to help us get our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. What I'm doing right now, so this is Thai basil. Thai basil, probably one of the most predominant, or like one of the most iconic flavors that go in a Thai Pad Kee Mao. As you can see, my Thai basil not looking super hot because it's not even that old. This is only like 3 or 4 days old. I don't know why this is already wilted. It kind of sucks. We'll see if we can salvage some. Thai basil, it is not like sweet basil. So you can't get your hands on Thai basil, but you can get your hands on sweet basil. It's not the same thing. They taste super different. Sweet basil is more of like an aromatic sweet flavor. Thai basil has a more of a licorice, like fragrant licorice quality to it. And it is not looking super hot. It's really, I bought this basil specifically for this dish. So if you can't find Thai basil, my recommendation anytime that if someone can't find Thai basil, or if you can't get your hands on it, what I always recommend is don't go for sweet basil, don't go for any other kind of basil, it's not going to taste the same. What I usually say is just add a star anise. That's probably my next favorite substitute in place of Thai basil. Because it will give you the same kind of like licorice qualities. So it's not going to be the same thing. Of course, it's not going to be the same thing. It's a completely different ingredient. But if you can't get your hands on Thai basil at all, star anise, add it to the chicken marinade, and it will probably get you something close. It happens. Yeah, I got to get an herb saver, I think. That shit happens. Yeah. Thai chilies aren't that hot. Yeah, that's what people who can handle really spicy things say. Yeah, I guess like in the grand scheme of things, though, they're not that hot. When we're talking about like really spicy stuff. Cool. What an interesting show. Yeah, thank you. All right, so next up, this is our noodles. So today we are working with, I probably should have shown everyone the label first. So this is fresh chow fun. It is clearly labeled. It will generally be called chow fun. Sometimes you'll see it labeled like wide rice noodles or something to that effect. What we want to do anytime that we're working with fresh chow fun is we want to be careful about how we like prep it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pull all of these noodles. Excuse me. We're going to pull all of these noodles apart. So we want to be careful not to. So this is a block of noodles. If we just dumped it into the wok fry, a couple of things might happen. So if it's really, really fresh and you're really, really lucky, they might separate and you might get chow fun in your noodles. But most likely, more likely than not, what's going to happen is they're not going to separate. And then you're going to have a block of chow fun, like basically a block of rice that just goes straight into the wok fry, which is not super fun. So what we want to do anytime that we're working with fresh chow fun is separate these noodles first. And that's a little bit laborious because it means that you kind of have to go through and break all of these noodles apart. But it is going to help us make sure that those noodles don't clump up, which is the biggest enemy of noodle dishes like this. If you have really, really fresh chow fun, so if you manage to get to the market early and you get yourself some fresh chow fun, this stuff, it should separate pretty easily like mine is. So I bought this, I want to say I bought this at like 1 or 2 o'clock. I got to the market a little bit late, but this is relatively fresh. So if you get to the market early and you manage to get your hands on fresh chow fun like this, it should pull apart relatively easily, like what we're doing right now. If you don't get chow fun is more stale than it is fresh. Which will happen, say, like if you get to the market late, or if you buy it the day before. So if I bought this chow fun yesterday and it was a day old chow fun, you would have a lot more trouble pulling these noodles apart, and then you would end up with things like crumbling and like breakage. You'll get like a bunch of like really short pieces of noodle. That's really frustrating, because what you will end up with is like a really crumbly Pad Kee Mao, which is not super fun. So we want to avoid all of those things. So in order to avoid those things, the number one thing that you want to do is make sure that when you buy your fresh chow fun, you use it that day. So most of the time when you come across fresh chow fun like this, those markets that you're buying it at, so the grocery store that you're buying it at, they're probably stocking it the day of, and that's why they only carry like a very small quantity of it, because they're only carrying enough to sell for that day, which is why I say you got to get to the market pretty early, because it will probably sell out, because remember that the restaurants are also buying the same noodles, so the restaurants also have to buy it the same day. So if you don't get there early enough, you might end up with stale chow fun. If you don't have time to buy it on the day of, that might also cause some problems with getting fresh chow fun too. So all of these things to say that if you can't get your hands on fresh chow fun, you could also just use dry rice noodles. That will work fine too. You can totally make use of dry rice noodles. It's not the same. Dry rice noodles, they're usually a little bit thicker. Sometimes they're a little bit more brittle, because obviously they're coming from frozen or like freeze-dried noodles, which is fine. But if you can get your hands on this fresh chow fun, I highly recommend it. Oh, yeah, Cat Lady is a great username. Yeah, I'm glad it's informational. Please do subscribe. Yeah, please do hop over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Lots of fun stuff. Yeah. You never get fresh noodles where you live. Yeah, I've heard from a couple of people who have followed these recipes that they've made the fresh chow fun themselves, which leads me to believe maybe isn't that hard to do. I have actually never attempted to make fresh chow fun myself, but I do get the feeling that it's maybe not that hard. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily super easy, but I don't think it's like as laborious as lots of people make it out to be. The other thing that I want to point out here too is that you'll notice that there's all of this oil coming off of my hands. That's because fresh chow fun, it's packaged in oil. That's how they keep these noodles from clumping or like sticking together. So in order to like make sure that we can pull them apart, we're probably going to come up with a lot of oil stuck to your hands like this. So that's totally fine, but we have to be careful about, like, as we add these noodles to our wok fry, that we're not adding too much oil, because remember that once these noodles get in, we're also going to be adding this oil along with it. So, all of this stuff, it's going to stick to the noodles. Red Panda, yeah, how's it going? Hello to everyone watching on YouTube. All right. Oh, the last thing I'll mention, that if you do have stale chow fun, if for whatever reason you don't do any of the things that I just told you, and you do find yourself working with stale chow fun, which I have actually done many times, what I have found is that if you just microwave that stuff for about a minute and maybe a minute and 20 seconds, it starts to loosen up a little bit. It's not going to look nearly as fresh and like fluffy like this, but you will still be able to. It will be edible, so you can still use it. So, if all else fails, I say that's the best solution. Hey, Hamcharo. That's Hamcharo, everyone. If you're not familiar with Hamcharo is the hamster that eats ramen. He only gets to eat ramen anytime that someone subscribes. So if you want to, please feed Hamcharo. Please subscribe. Cool. What other dishes can you make with chow fun? Yeah, that's a really good question. There are a lot of noodle dishes that we can make. Of the dishes that we've done, you can do, Pad Kee Mao, which is the one that we're doing. Pad See Ew is a very similar Thai noodle dish, but it has a couple fewer veggies. You could also do beef chow fun, which is a really great one. You could probably use chow fun in Pad Thai. That's not necessarily what goes into Pad Thai, but it's a very similar noodle. Pad Thai actually has Pad Thai in it. but it's a very similar noodle, essentially the same thing, but pad thai is sliced thinner. That's the big difference. So yeah, it's a super versatile noodle dish, noodle that you can use in a lot of different things. So, but usually what I do, because it's so fresh and so like volatile, is I'll just use all of it. So today we're having, that's I think 1 pound of chow fun, and we're just going to use all of it because it will be stale by tomorrow. So I'm not even going to bother trying to get it to keep. I have messed around with things like freezing them, which seems to like work okay sometimes, but most of the time it just goes stale. So I just stopped trying. It's not quite 2 tablespoons. Well, you find yourself ordering out because your parents are Buddhist, so they make Chinese food without the use of onions, garlics, or leek. That is where like most of the things, onions, garlic, and leek are in pretty much all Chinese food. That's a real bummer. Yeah. Cool. All right. So next up, what we're doing right now is we're assembling our sauce base. So that was 4 tablespoons of regular low-sodium soy sauce, and that's 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce. So, the big 3 that go in a lot of the things that I use dark soy sauce in, and really just like a lot of the things that have really like dark and thick color and caramelized color. That's 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of black vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. You will see me using all 3 of these ingredients together super often because they kind of function in the same world. If we're trying to create this like really dark and like luxurious shade of color in our dishes, you'll see me using these 3 ingredients. So this is the same combination of sauces that we used in our Pad See Ew dish, which does a very similar thing, has the similar color. It's the same thing that I did in the beef chow fun. I believe I also used the same thing in our lion's head meatball, which has like a dark soy sauce braise. All of these things doing a very similar, or acting in a very similar purpose. Onion and garlic, yeah, they're like the 2 biggest things that go into Chinese food, to be honest. That's a real bummer. Next up, this is going to be 2 tablespoons of sambal olek, which sambal olek is a fermented chili sauce that comes from, I believe it comes from Thai food. 95% sure about that. And finally, this is going to be 2 tablespoons? 4 tablespoons. This is 4 tablespoons of fish sauce. Fish sauce, just like that oyster sauce that we added a moment earlier, also comes from the fermentation of fish, as the name implies. So those 2 ingredients, that's where all of our fishy umami is going to come from. And that's our sauce. We're going to set that aside, and that's going to go in very last. Yeah, what's the difference between oyster sauce and fish sauce? So they're very similar. I often recommend folks using it interchangeably, which is not necessarily like totally interchangeable, but they provide very similar qualities of umami. So oyster sauce, as the name implies, comes from the fermentation of oyster. I always imagine that fish sauce is more of like closely associated with a sardine or an anchovy. Excuse me, not a sardine, an anchovy. And that coming from like that kind of quality of like really bright, a little bit more sweet, fishy umami. I guess like the big difference the way that I always look at it is that oyster sauce has that dark brown caramel color, and it has like a little bit more like thickness and richness. Also, like generally, if you're looking at cuisines, you will probably see oyster sauce come up more in Chinese food. And then you will probably see fish sauce come up a lot more in things like Vietnamese and Thai cuisine. But just irrespective of the cuisines that they come from, you will often see them serving the same purpose, which is really just like deriving some form of like fishy umami and like fishy fermentation. So what I always recommend is like if a recipe calls for oyster sauce but you don't have oyster sauce, I like to say it out with some fish sauce. If you don't have fish sauce, you could also substitute it out with a little bit of anchovy. And if you don't have any of those things, then you're kind of shit out of luck, I guess. But yeah, generally what we're looking for is that like fishy quality of umami. Yeah. Cool. Next up, so in the original recipe that I put up over on YouTube a couple months ago, I believe we called for ground pork. I think that's what we used. Today, because we have this whole bin of leftover chicken, this comes from our food booth. I'm going to use some chicken thigh. So this is prepped chicken thigh that we cooked for the booth, or for the pop-up last weekend. I'm going to make use of this stuff because I have a whole lot of it and I don't want it to go to waste. So we're going to use this chicken thigh. The chicken thigh, it's already marinated in a couple of things, but mainly it's just marinated in a little bit of soy sauce. I might add a couple of extra things to that chicken thigh. And then from there, we're probably just going to par cook it, and that's going to be pretty much it. So that's going to be a pinch of salt. I'm going to add a little bit of soy sauce and just a pinch of white pepper. All of these things totally optional. As you probably noticed, this chicken is already cooked, which means that it technically doesn't need any of these things because it's technically already marinated in all of those things. But I think it's going to help a little bit. That also means that we're going to throw this chicken in super late because it doesn't have to cook. So we're going to make a couple of adjustments there so that we don't end up wasting food. The pop-up, yeah, it went really great. So I think we almost sold out, but we ended up, I don't know, I did the math wrong somehow, and we cooked like 5 pounds of extra chicken. That just like didn't get into anything, so it didn't go into any fried rice. So I just literally have 5 pounds of cooked chicken thigh sitting in my refrigerator. And if we don't eat it up by like maybe the end of this week or maybe the end of next week, it's gonna go bad and I'll have to throw it out, which is a real bummer. And I really don't like food waste. So, but yeah, it went really great. Thank you for asking. Which also reminds me, by the way, if you are looking for more information, so we do have a food pop-up. We're in Alameda every first Sunday of the month, and we're also at the Hayward Farmers Market every second and fourth Saturday of the month. That's starting in August. So if you're looking for the pop-up, if you happen to be here in the Bay Area and you're looking for the pop-up, that always lives over on the website. That's at woocancook.com/eats. So you can find all that information over there. So if you're here in the Bay Area, come and get some food. We're doing all of the fried rices that come from our YouTube series. So it's a fun one. All right, so over on the stove, I've got my wok heating up. We're gonna get that thing ripping hot, and then we can start cooking. Yeah. Cool. Hello, everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. I apologize. We missed the pop-up. We missed the stream yesterday because I didn't sleep on Sunday because we were at the pop-up the entire time. So on Monday I was just really tired and I didn't have the energy to stream. So here we are. We're back today though, and we'll be back tomorrow doing. I think we're doing a stir fry tomorrow. Oh, we're doing broccoli beef. I rescheduled broccoli beef to tomorrow or Thursday. So. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, though, we're generally going to be here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday, we came out with a recipe for a broccoli beef stir fry, which is one of my favorite stir fries. Let's see, Friday before that, I think we did the jianbing, which is a Chinese crepe. And I can't remember what came out. I think we did gimbap the week before that. So this Friday coming up, we have a recipe for a sweet and sour chicken, which is surprisingly interesting. I'm not a huge fan of like overly sweet stir fries like that, but it was surprisingly good. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So that's going to be a super fun one. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely find your way over to the YouTube channel and check out what's going on over there. We're working our way up to 4,500 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Feed him Charo. He's very hungry. All right, so over in our wok, we've got this thing nice and hot, and then we're gonna add, this is gonna be 4 tablespoons of peanut oil. And then we're gonna give our long yao, which is essentially coating that hot wok in cold oil. That's gonna create our non-stick surface. We got a little bit more oil there. And then I'm going to start things off with my garlic and ginger. You'll sometimes, very oftentimes, at least in my recipes, see these two elements referred to as the aromatics of a recipe for the obvious reason that they are aromatic, or that we're looking for their aromatic qualities. So I usually like to go for about 10, maybe 15 seconds on these, but use your nose at this point when you start smelling garlic and ginger. You know you're ready to go on. Next up are our veggies. I'm going to add my broccoli a little bit early. I like to give the broccoli a little bit of a head start because it is a particularly durable vegetable. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but the big challenge when you are using broccoli without a par cook is that it is a really, really durable vegetable. So if you don't cook it properly, it won't cook all the way through, and then you're going to end up with like undercooked or like really, really chewy broccoli, which is not good. So I'm going to give that broccoli maybe another like 30 seconds to go, and then we'll get that bell pepper in. Ooh, broccoli chicken, that would be good too. Yeah, I do love broccoli. Alright, so there's our bell pepper going in. By the way, if you are following along, if we were using chicken that wasn't already cooked, so our chicken that we're using today is fully cooked through already because I cooked it during our prep day yesterday, or our prep day on Saturday, last weekend. But if we weren't using already cooked chicken, that chicken would have gone in first. So we would have cooked that chicken very, very first and had that cook all the way through. In this case, because it's already cooked, I'm just going to add it super late because all we're trying to do is heat it up and just like bring it back up to temperature. But if you are using raw chicken, that should have gone in first. Yeah. Cool. So before we add our chicken, the last two things that I'm going to add here, or maybe the second to last thing that we're going to add. Where'd they go? Oh, here they are. I'm going to add our Thai chili, but what I usually like to do when I'm working with Thai chili is I like to make sure that they get in contact with some oil. So I'm going to add a little bit more oil here and then add our chilies in. The reason that I like to make sure that they hit that oil is because that oil is going to bloom out all of the capsaicin from our chili. And that's where all of our flavor is going to come from. So what I usually do if the wok is already full is shift things to one side and make sure that it hits that bottom of the wok really solidly in order to bloom out that fragrance. Make sure that your windows are open once those get in though, because they are very caustic and it will definitely start picking up a lot of smoke if you're not prepared for it. We'll see if I cough. I usually cough when I add those things in. Do I have a cookbook or an ebook? No, I don't. I've been like scheming one. I was like loosely working on one, and then we ended up starting the pop-up booth instead. So maybe I'll get back to working on that soon. But for now, all of the videos are just in the YouTube video format. All right. There's our chicken going back in. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm really just going to reheat that chicken and bring it up to temperature so that we're not eating cold chicken. If we're paying attention to food safety, or if you're following the food safety health regulations, that chicken, once you reheat it, it should be coming back up to 165 F. I usually, if I'm not cooking for other people, or if I'm not cooking in an FDA certified kitchen, probably will shoot for something a little bit lower. I usually go for like 140. I find that to be a little bit more tender. But use your own discretion at this point. Oh, shiatsu peppers. Yeah, I have not specifically worked with a shiatsu pepper in any of these recipes, but I do love a good shiatsu pepper. That's a good one. What I always say is that like, if you can't get your hands on Thai chilies, really any kind of pepper will work fine. So I've substituted out. I've used Fresnos before. I've used Serranos. I used jalapenos at certain points. All of those things will work fine as long as they bring a little bit of heat. They're going to work out okay. They're not going to do the exact same thing because they're obviously going to have different flavors, but they will serve the same purpose. They're going to bring a similar kind of heat. So if you can't get your hands on Thai chilies, yeah, that'll work. It just so happens so that I found somewhere where I can get Thai chilies down the street. So I happen to always have Thai chilies, which is pretty lucky. All right, going in next is our chow fun. So what you will notice that I'm doing here, so I'm going to add that's about a handful or so of my chow fun, plus a little bit of that sauce, and then I'm going to give a very gentle turn. So I'm not going to do any more of that really aggressive wok tossing anymore. So you will notice that from this point onward, we're going to be a lot more gentle with the way that we manage our wok. So we're not going to do any kind of like really aggressive shaking or tossing or any of that stuff anymore. Now that we're into, now that chow fun is getting into our wok, we want to exercise a lot of delicacy and caution because the chow fun is really, really delicate. So if you're too aggressive with how you handle the wok, that chow fun is going to start breaking apart, and then you're going to have all of these like fragmented like bits and pieces of chow fun, which is not what we're after. So in order to preserve those big long strands of chow fun, we want to make sure that we're being really gentle with how we handle the wok from this point onward. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding that's a little bit of chow fun plus a little bit of sauce, and then just sort of repeating. There it is. That's that chili. And at this point, I'm paying pretty close attention to the general color and like consistency of my chow fun at this point. So I want to make sure that we don't over season with sauce here. Remember that dark soy sauce as well as that oyster sauce is really, really thick in consistency and very, very concentrated. So you can, at this point, absolutely over season if you add too much stuff at once or too much sauce all at once. And I think that might actually be good enough right there. Then the second to last thing that I'm adding here is going to be our Thai basil, which I think we managed to salvage it a little bit. I've heard differing opinions on whether or not you should add the Thai basil really, really early or really, really late. I've personally always been a fan of adding it really, really early because I have always felt that it blooms out their aromatic qualities. But I have also read lots of opinions that you got to add Thai basil really, really late because otherwise it will bloom out and then it won't become fragrant. Then it won't be, you won't be able to taste it at all, which I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, but we're going to try it today. All right. Finally, last up is going to be our eggs, which again we're using, so we could take a look. Nope, not if the camera's not on. So what we're using today is some more leftovers from our food booth. So this is just some egg, which is pre-cracked and whisked with an immersion blender. Once that egg is in, we're also pretty much done cooking at this point. So we're really just looking to let some of that egg set, and we should pretty much be there. Once again, though, we are also still being super, super careful about how we toss. We're not doing any real aggressive shifting or shuffling with, especially if you're using a metal wok or a spatula like we're using today. We're being real careful not to break any of those big, long strands of noodles. Hey, there's ham chara. Everyone say hi to Ham Charo. Alright. So I'm going to give maybe another 10 seconds for these noodles to set, and then we should be good. Sauce. Alright. Whoa, there goes the camera lens. I guess we could switch back over while that defogs. The last thing that I'll do anytime that we're cooking in a wok, especially if you're cooking in a carbon steel wok like this one, so we want to give it a quick rinse. And sometimes if you're using egg, that stuff might stick. There it goes. Yeah, a little bit more stickage than usual. But so I didn't do too much scrubbing. I just went roughly over it with a little bit of steel wool. I do actually think that it's perfectly fine to use steel wool on carbon steel. But what's most important is that while that wok is hot, we really want to try and clean it while it's still hot. Because while it's hot, it's got this nice non-stick surface. Once things cool down, everything that's stuck to it is going to stay stuck to it. So if, for example, excuse me, you finish cooking and then you sit down and eat because you got food right in front of you, you're going to end up with stuff stuck to that wok real bad, and then you're going to have a lot more trouble cleaning it than what we just did. So what I did, that took me, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds or so. That would be a lot more difficult to do if we let it cool down and then tried to do the same thing with a cold wok. And then I don't do this after every cook, but maybe every like 5 or 6 cooks, add a little bit of peanut oil and give that carbon steel a nice coating of oil. And that's just going to keep things nice and seasoned, and it's going to prevent that wok from rusting, which also means do the back side, do the bottom. It's supposed to do the handle too. I don't do the handle because I got a handle cover. And that's going to keep your wok ready to cook for next time. What's the purpose of the egg? Does it bind everything together? So yeah, I guess you could probably think of it that way. You could actually leave the egg out. That's actually how like a lot of Chinese noodle stir fries are done. That's how you would do like say like a beef chow fun. Is what I've always said is beef chow fun is essentially Pad Kee Mao or Pad See Ew, but with a bok choy instead of broccoli, and also without the egg, because essentially that egg is kind of like an iconic thing that comes up in a lot of Thai noodle dishes. So. Same thing that you'll see happen in Pad Thai. You'll see it in Pad See Ew, you'll see it in Pad Kee Mao like this. And essentially what it's just doing is it's coating the noodles in egg. And it's kind of a quality that you'll probably come across in a lot of noodle dishes that come from Thai food. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that it really plays a role in like binding the noodles together. I think it's just like a quality of noodle, or part of the quality of the noodle that you'll come across in a lot of Thai noodle dishes like this. Because most especially the reason that I think that is because a lot of times you'll come across very, very similar dishes like beef chow fun, for example, which is essentially the same thing but without the egg. And it's still super delicious. It works just the same. Cool. If I oil the bottom of the wok, will the oil not reach smoking point? No, yeah, it would still reach smoking point. The oil is not really residual. It's not going to. So sometimes if you use too much oil, it might stick behind, and that will probably start causing problems. Mostly because the oil will probably start going rancid. But the oil is not really going to leave behind once you just coat it. What it's really there to do is just kind of leave like a very, very thin residual layer of oil, and what that's doing is preventing things from oxidizing, which is the same reason why I don't do it after every cook anymore. I used to do it after every cook, but I don't find it that it's that necessary. Really, what we're just trying to do is make sure that it's like stays like seasoned, kind of like you might think of it like coating your wood cutting board in like oil, or like something to keep it hydrated, basically. It's kind of doing a similar thing, but basically what we're trying to do is make sure that thing doesn't start rusting, because carbon steel has this quality about it, which is part of what makes it such a great material for cooking in, but it oxidizes very, very quickly. So for the same reason, so my knives are also made out of carbon steel. If you ever notice when I cut things with my knives, that I wipe it off very frequently. So what I'm doing is I'm wiping off the liquid from the knife. Because you can't leave wet liquids coating carbon steel, because if you leave carbon steel coated in any kind of water, so like submerged, or if you like put it in the dryer rack and it's like partially touching water, it's going to start oxidizing and it's going to turn a weird color. So sometimes if it's really bad, it might even start rusting, which is not great. That's what we really, really don't want to do. So that's the real purpose of that oil, is to just make sure that things don't start rusting. Cool. That's nice. Yeah, that is super tasty, and also pretty spicy. People always say not to wash or rinse a hot pan. So that's true for some pans. It depends on the type of pan. It really depends on the type of pan. I should correct myself. It is very, very important which type of pan that we're talking about. If we're talking about carbon steel, like this wok, for example, if it's a well-made wok, it should not warp. So if you have a good solid carbon steel wok, like this one, so this carbon steel wok is literally just a piece of carbon steel that's shaped into a wok. If you look really closely, if you like flip it over, you can even see where the seams are. So it's literally a sheet of carbon steel that has been shaped round into a wok, and that's it. So there's no real harm in like coming across like damaging the wok in any way, because there's nothing really to damage. It's literally just a piece of carbon steel. There are other types of pans, however, that will absolutely get damaged if you do the same thing. So you never ever want to do the same thing with things like a Teflon wok or a Teflon non-stick pan. So if you say like have a Teflon skillet that you use to make eggs in, you can't do a similar thing. I definitely don't do it. I don't know necessarily that it's that important, but I don't do it in stainless steel pans either, because all of those things will warp. So with a Teflon, for example, it will actually, I think it could actually potentially even crack the Teflon coating. With stainless steel, I think it would actually warp if you do it with stainless steel. I don't actually know, because I've never actually tried. But when I work with my stainless steels, I don't actually do that. I usually will just leave it and let it cool down and then clean it afterward. But with carbon steel, though, it's not going to warp. As long as it's made well, it's not going to warp for sure. But yeah, totally, 100%, it depends on what kind of pan we're talking about. So do some research, take a closer look. I do the same thing with my cast iron pans. I have never had a problem with cast iron warping or cracking in any way. I've taken cast iron like right off of the grill and just thrown it in water, and that thing is, unless you like smack cast iron onto the pavement, it's never gonna crack. It always like astonishes me when I see people with broken cast iron pans, because like, how did you break that? That's great. It's made out of iron, so like, how can you possibly break cast iron? So, but yeah, again, it totally depends on the metal of. The quality of metal that you're working with, 100%. Do I cook professionally? Yeah, I guess I cook professionally now. So for those who weren't here earlier, I operate a food booth, or I operate a food pop-up under the same name. We're called Woo Can Cook. We do wok fried rices. We're cooking in big old wok burners. And if you're here in the Bay Area, we're at the Alameda Point Antiques Fair every first Sunday. In the Hayward Farmers Market every second and fourth Saturdays. And then we're slowly adding more places too. So if you're here in the Bay Area, come find us. If you're looking for more information about that, that's over on the website. It's at woocancook.com/eats. And basically everything that we're cooking are recipes that have come out over on the YouTube channel. So most of the things that we're cooking so far are mostly the fried rices that come out from the YouTube channel. So we're doing, they're all things that I've cooked on stream many, many times. So if you've watched these streams before, you probably have even seen me cook a lot of those things. So we're doing the kimchi fried rice, the lapchang fried rice, the crispy bacon fried rice, and the Hawaiian spam fried rice. And then a couple other things that are going to get added to the menu pretty soon. So we're actually talking about expanding the menu later this week. So yeah, if you're looking for stuff like that, it's really fun. Definitely find your way over to the pop-up. It's really, it's been fun cooking for other people. So cool. Hey, there's Ham Charo. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're watching on Reddit and you haven't yet, definitely find your way over to the YouTube channel. So that will be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. Please feed Ham Charo. He's the hamster that eats ramen. He only gets fed every time somebody subscribes, so please feed him. He's very hungry. We're working our way up to 4,500 subs by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit that subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Every Friday we also have new recipe videos coming out. So last Friday we came out with a recipe for a broccoli beef stir fry. We're going to be cooking that. We ended up delaying that stream, but we're going to be cooking through that one this coming Thursday, so not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, at the same time and place, 6:30 PST, right here on Reddit or YouTube or both. So if you want to tune in then, we're going to cook through the recipe that's up on the YouTube right now. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here doing some dishes. Recently bought a few California. Oh yeah. Yeah, California. So I think California, well, actually that's not true. I have a couple of their anodized aluminum pans, California, and they've been pretty good. I had a bunch of their Teflon nonsticks over the last 10 years, and I mostly just threw them out because the Teflon just wears out, just like any other pan. What I've always said is that if you're buying Teflon nonstick, I always just say just buy the cheapest one because the Teflon is going to wear out. No matter what you do, it doesn't matter how expensive the pan is. That Teflon is eventually going to wear out. So I usually just I'll buy nonstick pans at IKEA. I own one nonstick pan, and I think I literally bought it at IKEA. And I have to replace it so often that I'm not going to spend a lot of money on a nonstick pan. Other than that, so this wok, I don't think it has a brand, but this wok I got at a restaurant supply store. And I've also been a really big fan of the Paul Revere cooked skillets. I did a little bit of homework on this because I found one at an antique store recently, and I did a whole bunch of research on it. So Paul Revere has this brand. So Paul Revere Cookware is his popular cooking brand. And they have a line of stainless steel skillets and pots. And they're specifically known for their stainless steel skillets that are copper lined, so copper bottomed skillets, which are really, really useful for a bunch of different things. That copper bottom does a lot of work for you, where it creates this really, really even heating. It also heats up really, really quickly and cools down really, really quickly because copper has that capacity to do that. Without that copper, it kind of just turns into a crappy skillet. But with that copper, it kind of has this really, really great quality about it, where you have really, really great control over your heat. Paul Revere Cookware, they made their pans so well that they actually went out of business because nobody ever replaced their pans. So people would buy these pans and they would keep them for 80 years because they never break until the handle. People would say is until the handle literally snapped off, they would just keep these pans forever. So what I've been doing is I've been searching far and wide for the Paul Revere Cookware. I've been on the hunt for a 12-inch Paul Revere skillet, and I have not yet found one. But yeah, I've been looking for those. It's if you have the chance to do it, I recommend looking into the Paul Revere skillets. I have one of their skillets and one of their saucepans, and they're really, really good. They're probably 2 pans that I will, in addition to this wok, probably the 3 pans that I will keep probably for the rest of my life because they're never gonna break. So definitely, it's a really interesting story. Go down your Google it and go down a rabbit hole. I promise you, it's really, really entertaining. Cool. Oh, you're gonna try and make it? Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. If you are gonna try and make it, definitely find the recipe video. Here's the recipe. Cool. Yeah. Let me know how it goes too. I'm always super interested in seeing pictures and stuff. So there's also a subreddit too, the Woo Can Cook subreddit, where lots of people have been posting pictures. So if you do make it, take some pictures and post them over there. It's always really fun to see how they turn out for other people. That's kind of how I learned that lots of people have been making their own chow fun because they can't find fresh chow fun. So it's always really fun. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here doing dishes, and if not, I'll see you on Thursday. Broccoli beef stir fry. See you soon. Bye. If you think that you don't know, never mind that you still don't love yourself. No, you can find it from somebody else. No, everybody's got to grow up. Sometimes funny how we shoot the move. Still, when we fighting, baby. Alright, never mind. Then I found what I'm looking for, baby. Yes, I found it now. Alright, I'm finally in love with love, and it's freaking me down. Do you want to be, baby? Yes, do you want to be, baby? Alright. Oh, wait now, babe. I said everybody wants to be different. I still got streets, but they don't love me like they used to love it. And I'm reminded of how bad I used to want it. And yes, I still got streets, but more like I took it of my 20s, and it's breaking me down. Want to be, baby, yes, do you want to be? Found the bottom of the barrel was always down. whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. Your bed warm, glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stone on your love all the time.